Peace and blessings, people. Welcome back to the channel once again, where I give you tips and approaches on how to take a more holistic and natural approach to not only preventing disease, but also healing disease in the body as well. Now, if this is your first time on the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button below. It'll give you notifications on when I come out with amazing content like this in the future, but it also keeps me inspired to come out with more content like this as well too. So make sure you comment as well. Also, this particular topic today is near and dear to me because my grandmother passed away when I was 16 of colon cancer. Okay, and she was near and dear to me. So it inspired me to become a healthcare professional. And then particularly it inspired me to become a healthcare professional who takes a holistic approach to healing. Okay, so we're gonna be diving in today. I'm gonna give you 7 signs that could be potential signs and symptoms of colon cancer, but I'm also gonna give you 7 holistic and natural approaches to not only preventing, but healing that disease in the body as well too. So without any further ado, let's get started. Now, the reason why this topic is so important is because colon cancer is one of the most common cancers of all cancers, okay? Despite the fact that breast cancer probably has more popularity, other cancers have more popularity, colon cancer is by far one of the most common cancers between both genders, male and female. The other thing that makes this topic so important is colon cancer is the second leading cause of cancer-related death. The second leading cause of cancer-related death. And most people don't know that statistic. The other reason why this is so important as well is because on average, it takes cancer around 10 years to form in the body. So you probably have been going to get a checkup every year, no cancer, no cancer. And then you get that diagnosis, and in your mind, you're thinking it happened between the last appointment and this appointment. No, it doesn't happen that way. It forms over the course of a decade, okay? And with that being said, it means that something is slowly contributing to it, or something isn't causing it to die out, okay? Because our immune systems are designed to stomp out cancer. Most of the cancer that happens in our bodies, we never see, it never comes to fruition because our immune system is stomping it out. So something happens in that 10-year span that changes that, okay? The other reason why this topic is so important, and especially for the Black and brown community, is that African Americans are 20% more likely, they have a 20% increased risk factor for getting colorectal cancer, okay, or colon cancer. The other scary statistic is African Americans are 40% more likely to die when diagnosed with colon cancer, okay? So that's a huge statistic, all right? And that says to us that this is a huge problem, especially in the Black and brown community. And one of the primary examples that we have was the actor Chadwick Boseman, who was the Black Panther actor and an amazing actor who died at 43 years old of colorectal cancer. And that's one of the trends that we're noticing is that is exploding, is that people are not only getting diagnosed earlier, but people are dying earlier of this cancer. And one of the really important factors with survival and thriving from this cancer is early detection, okay? And we'll get into some other things in a moment where we'll talk about how you go about doing that. The other reason why this topic is also so important is because African Americans tend to be more affected because of the type of diet that they have, okay? We tend to have a diet that is high in fat and high in sugar and low in fiber, okay? And that type of diet is essentially a prescription for cancer and all other types of metabolic disease. So metabolic diseases could be diabetes, obesity, high blood pressure, cardiovascular disease, etc. Okay? And that particular diet is not only a diet of deficiency, so we end up overeating, but we end up deficient, but we also end up very toxic because that diet is also very processed, okay? And ultra processed foods are laden with carcinogens, okay? And we'll get into that whole discussion. And that's a very deep discussion because in the African American community, most communities have food deserts, meaning places in the community that don't have access to fresh fruits, vegetables, nuts, and seeds. Okay. The average travel time is 3 to 4 times that of other communities. Okay. And as a result, there's less access to those type of healthy foods that are actually cancer preventative and anti-inflammatory. Okay. So there's multiple factors that are socioeconomic, political, and others, but the big point, the emphasis is that many of those factors are lifestyle factors that, when educated with the things that I'm giving you today, that you can change on your own in the Black and brown community. The other reason why this topic is so important is because, when you think about how cancer forms in the body, as I mentioned before, it forms over the course of 10 years. And it literally starts with the cells in the lining of the colon essentially becoming disrupted because the DNA becomes mutated, and then those cells begin to multiply. Okay. And one of the things that could really help is that most people aren't first of all, aren't taking care of their health and their gut health in particular the way that they need to. But the other thing is people aren't getting the checkups that they need to have on a regular basis. So those are just a few reasons why this conversation is so important, is because the food system isn't changing. Okay. And what we've seen since the 1970s, since President Richard Nixon was in office, what we saw was there was a declaration of war on cancer. But since that time, even though cancer has gone down with some certain cancers, the rate of cancer really has not, okay, in terms of the success rate. Because typically how they judge the success rate is based on survival, okay? But a cancer survivor means that you survive 5 years post your diagnosis. That's all that it means. It doesn't mean that on the 6th year you didn't pass away. Okay, so that the way that we even judge our success on healing cancer is a little bit warped. So it's really important that we first know those risk factors that could be putting us at risk. And then secondly, I'm going to go over some of those signs and symptoms so that maybe if this is something that you're experiencing, or a collection of these signs and symptoms, that then you can make sure you go get checked, make changes in your lifestyle, your diet, etc., so that you can be more preventative and proactive instead of reactive. Okay, so let's get into some of the risk factors that increase your risk for forming this very dangerous cancer. Okay. Number one risk factor. And these aren't necessarily in priority level, but the first risk factor is being African American, okay, which is crazy. But in particular, when you really think about it, it isn't necessarily being African American. What it is eating the African American diet. Okay, as I mentioned before, the African American diet is laden in fat, animal fat in particular, laden in sugar, which feeds cancer, and also very high in processed foods, which has no fiber. And a combination of those three things are, as I said before, is a prescription for cancer. Okay, so the African American diet is definitely a risk factor. The African American diet are not only high in those things, but it's high in foods that are fried, barbecued, overcooked, okay, ultra processed, those type of foods. So you got to get those foods out of the diet because those foods are inflammatory. And inflammatory foods cause cancer to grow, okay, and shut down the immune system that fights off cancer. Okay, number two, sedentary lifestyle. We live a sedentary lifestyle even though we live an active lifestyle. What I mean by that is people are always on the go, but they're not always on the move. They're leaving one place to go to the next place, but we're not walking to go there anymore. We're not exercising throughout the day. We're exercising when we go to the gym. Whereas our ancestors, our great grandparents, walked to school, walked to work, worked outside in the sun. All of these factors play a huge role in the lifestyle. And the lifestyle we live today is we get up, we go to the garage, get in our cars, we drive to work, we're in a garage, we walk into work, and we sit down all day for 8 hours. And then we get in our cars and we get in traffic and for an hour, and then we drive back home, and then we sit on the couch. Okay, and we do that 5 days a week. Okay, and then we're so worn out from doing that emotionally, that we don't end up doing much on the weekends. Okay, so we live a sedentary lifestyle, and the sedentary lifestyle feeds cancer. Okay, alcohol consumption. Statistics show and studies show that alcohol consumption, even like one glass of alcohol per day, increases stomach cancer, increases pancreatic cancer, and also liver cancer. Now I know you've heard the sort of studies and things that say that, you know, a glass of wine a day is healthy for you, but look at the recent articles and studies, and you'll see that it's contradictory to that. Okay. Also, a high fat, low fiber diet. Okay. And here's the thing about fiber: you can only get fiber in plants. Okay. You cannot get it in meat. You cannot get it in dairy. You cannot get it in processed foods, because the definition of processed foods means it's gone through a process whereby the nutrients and the fiber have been removed from it. Okay. So a high fat, low fiber diet is essentially a prescription for cancer. Okay. And that's the diet that we eat. 60% of the standard American diet is processed, which means that 60% of our diet is fiberless. Okay. And then when we look at our kids, 67% of their diet, roughly 70% of their diet is processed, which means that it's fiberless, which means that it is deficient, has no nutrition in it. Okay, so that type of diet increases your risk for getting colon cancer. Also, red meat and processed meats is absolutely one of the risk factors for colon cancer. Okay, and let me explain why. Because those type of meats will have nitrates that become nitrites, that become nitrosamines, that essentially cause cancer. Okay, as a matter of fact, those type of meats, when you look at the governing agency that determines what is and what isn't cancerous, okay, what is carcinogenic, they have class processed meats, red meats, as a level 1 carcinogen, in the same category with cigarettes, asbestos, and plutonium. Okay, and most people have never heard that. So you're eating lunch meat, pepperoni, hot dogs, turkey, bacon, all of these things, red meat, all of these things will cause you to get colon cancer, okay, because of the presence of nitrates and nitrites, okay? Really, really important. And the other thing that's really important, because then people will say, well, I eat the other kind of meats. Well, what happens is when you cook those meats, because you have to cook them, and you have to cook them on high temperatures, those high temperatures create compounds known as heterocyclic amines, okay? Just from the burning, okay? Especially with barbecuing and frying, okay? Those things also increase the risk for cancer in the colon as well. As a matter of fact, for every 50 grams of processed meats that you eat, it increases your risk for cancer by 16%. And for every 50 grams of red meat you eat, it increases your risk for cancer by 12%. So just think about that for a second. That's just when you eat that. Now add all of the other things that I talked about before. You know, a lack of fiber, high fat, it's particularly animal fats, a lot of processed chemicals in those foods as well, sedentary lifestyle, etc. These are the things that compound on each other, but simply by eating those things, you can increase your risk by 16 to 12%. Okay, really important. Also, age. Age is also a risk factor too. We're now seeing people between the ages of 40 and 50. That's the highest category of people who are being diagnosed with colon cancer. Okay, and that number goes up exponentially as we age. Okay, because our diets tend to get worse, our organ systems tend to break down more and more over time, and we don't make adjustments in our lifestyle. Okay, also smoking. I remember in college going to shadow a doctor, and he was going to be doing a bypass, and he took one of the veins out and he showed it to me. He hooked it up to the end of like a faucet, clamped it down, turned the faucet on, and it literally looked like a sprinkler system, all of these holes inside of the vein or the blood vessel. okay? And that was caused by smoking. That's what smoking does to our blood vessels, okay? So smoking is a huge risk factor as well. Obesity. There are many cancers that are associated with obesity, and 75% of the American population is either overweight or obese, okay? And that exponentially increases your risk for cancer, particularly the cancers that people are familiar with, breast cancer, prostate cancer, colon cancer, et cetera, okay? Um, History of irritable bowel disease, okay? So things like ulcerative colitis, things of that nature, that also increases your risk as well. And then also diabetes. And I don't have to tell you that's over 250, there's like 100 million Americans with either pre-diabetes or diabetes. Okay, so just think about that for a second. You got roughly half of the population, more than half of the population that has some form of metabolic disorder, okay, particularly with blood sugars. And with that being said, it's really important to understand that your blood sugar will affect your cancer growth. And here's why. Because as your blood sugar levels go up, what's going to happen is that's going to increase the amount of insulin as well. And insulin and type 2 diabetes and obesity, all of these are caused by eating too much processed foods, okay? Eating too much processed foods. But particularly when you have an issue with your blood sugar, it's going to increase the hormone insulin. Insulin is a fat storage hormone. So A is going to cause you to be more obese, more overweight. Okay, so that's the first thing. And then also, excess adipose tissue or fat tissue will actually increase certain enzymes, which change certain hormones in the body, increasing more estrogen. So it's going to increase the amount of estrogen type cancers, like breast cancer as well. Okay, and it's really important. As insulin goes up, it's going to make your tumors grow in size. Okay, so a lot of people have a lot of insulin resistance issues, even women who have conditions like PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome. The issue really is insulin resistance, okay? Insulin resistance plays a huge role, and the reason why so many people in the American population have issues when it comes to metabolic disorder and high blood sugars and insulin resistance is because on average, the average American eats about 152 pounds of sugar every year, and they eat on average 135 pounds of starch or white flour every year. So you combine those two things, it's a prescription for what we're talking about. Okay, so those are just some of the risk factors associated with it. Now let's jump into some of those signs that I mentioned before. I'm going to give you 7 signs that could be an indication that you could be forming colon cancer. Okay, this is hugely important. And the reason why this is so important is because some of these are signs that could be things that are considered normal, quote unquote. But I always say this, just because something is common, it does not mean that it's normal, okay? It may be common that people have a lot of gas, but that is not normal, okay? So hugely important. Okay, so the first sign, and probably the most common sign of issues in the gut, which could be colon cancer, is change in bowel movements. Change in bowel movements in terms of constipation, in terms of the consistency of your bowel movement, in terms of like diarrhea, and in terms of incontinence. Okay, now of course you can have diarrhea for many reasons, but if you're having continual or chronic diarrhea and also constipation and also changes in your consistency, then you definitely want to go get checked. Okay, so that's one of the most common signs and symptoms. Okay, especially if it's something that doesn't happen just one time and then it doesn't happen, it's just chronic over time. Okay, also blood in the stool. Blood in the stool is a huge sign. Okay, and the reason why, what happens is you can notice the blood in the stool in a few different ways. Okay, it could be fresh blood, meaning like the blood will have the appearance of red liquid when it comes out into the toilet stool, and you'll see it. Okay, now that fresh blood is actually called hematokinesis. okay? And the reason why that's so important is because, you know, anytime you see blood in the stool, that is not only is that not normal, but it shouldn't be common either. But unfortunately, a lot of people will see that. Now, that could be as a result of having a lot of constipation. But what's really important to understand is that if you start to see blood in the stool, that is a huge alert. Okay, that's an emergency. Okay, so when you see fresh blood in the stool, that is called hematochezia. Okay, hematochezia. Okay, and if you see that, that could be a sign that you have a tumor in the sigmoid, okay, which is the lower end of the bowels or the colon, okay? All right, so hematochezia, which is fresh blood, okay? Or it could be black tarry stools. So if your stools are black, tar-like, that isn't fresh blood. That is blood that is hardened, okay? That isn't fresh blood. And that could be a sign of a right side colon or ascending colon tumor, okay? So you can kind of see the difference between the two. All right, so that's really, really, really important. Blood in the stool could be a huge indication, okay? Another thing is unexplained anemia, okay? So you get anemia out of nowhere and it's unexplained. That could be a sign too. And the anemia could be caused by the blood in the stool, okay? You could be losing up to 9 milliliters of blood every day. Okay, so as a result, losing that blood causes the anemia. So unexplained anemia could also be the problem as well. Also, abdominal pain and pelvic pain. So if you're getting abdominal pain, especially in the lower regions, or pelvic pain, that also can be an indication as well. And it could be caused by either a blockage, okay? The bowels can become either partially or completely obstructed, and that obstruction will cause pain. It also could be caused by a rupture in the bowels or a tear in the bowels or a perforation, okay? And that'll cause pain as well. Now, this also could be as a result of diverticulitis. It also could be as a result of irritable bowel syndrome. But again, if you start to see a combination of these signs or symptoms, then that's when you want to get a little bit concerned, okay? Another potential sign is unexplained weight loss. Unexplained, like out of the blue, you didn't change your diet, you didn't change how you exercise. Out of the blue, you just had this unexplained weight loss. And that's something that you'll commonly see with people with colon cancer. So unexplained, all of a sudden weight loss. Number 6 is vomiting, okay? If you start to, again, with a combination of these other symptoms, you start to see, you start to vomit and it becomes chronic, it could be a potential sign, because what could be happening is you could be vomiting as a result of the blockage or obstruction that you're having in the colon. But you also could be vomiting because what will happen is once you start to get cancer in the colon, you'll have a decreased gastrointestinal motility, meaning your bowels won't move like they should. Okay, so that could be a sign and symptom as well. And then another sort of sign and symptom is tenesmus. And what that is when you have a urge to go and have a bowel movement, but you never have a bowel movement. It's different from constipation, meaning you feel the urge, but there's no bowel movement there to happen. And it also could be, anytime you have a bowel movement, it could always feel incomplete, like there's something left. There's more to come, but there's nothing moving. Okay, not that you're trying to move it and it doesn't move, but simply you feel like there's something left over, but there's nothing coming out. There's no action, nothing going on. So those are the 7 signs. Those are the 7 signs that you need to watch out for. And then particularly a combination of those, because you can kind of see how all of these sort of play into each other. The vomiting could be caused by the blockage, okay? The blood in the stool could lead to the anemia, okay? The constipation is caused by the blockage. So all of these things are connected as one, but you can kind of see the signs and symptoms differently and kind of get an idea, okay, I need to go get myself checked. Because here's the thing that's really important: early detection leads to an increase in survival, but also the ability to fight this thing off. Okay, so let's get into the 7 solutions. The 7 solutions that you should be sort of adjusting in your lifestyle so that you not only can take a more holistic and natural approach, but it will also help you prevent and in some cases help with the support of healing your colon as well too. All right, so the number one thing, not in priority, just number one, is healthy fats. Okay, healthy fats are very important. Not animal fat, but healthy fat. Okay, so you want to get the good fat in your diet. Okay, because the bad fat or bad omega-3s, which are omega-3 fatty acids, are omega-6s. Omega-6s are inflammatory to the gut. Okay, omega-3s are anti-inflammatory to the gut. So I know a lot of you have heard about omega-3s, but not omega-6s. And they're supposed to be in a ratio. Okay, now if you eat an ultra processed diet, which most Americans do, which is the standard American diet, which is 60 to 70% processed food. If you eat that standard American diet, then your ratio is going to be 20 to 1 in favor of omega-6s. Omega-6s, again, are inflammatory to the gut, or causing inflammation inside of the gut, which inflames cancer. Okay, what we want to be is on the side of 1 to 1. Okay, so 1 to 1 in terms of omega-6s or into omega-3s, or even more make more omega-3s to omega-6s. And the way that we do that is we eat real food. Real food is fruits, vegetables, nuts, and seeds. And those foods are not only anti-inflammatory to the gut, but they're healing to the gut because they have fiber in them. Remember, plants are the only foods that have fiber. Okay, and with that being said, the fiber is not only good for the gut in terms of keeping you regular with your bowel movements, but that fiber, the insoluble fiber, helps with forming the bowel movement, and the soluble fiber feeds the good bacteria in your gut. Okay, makes the good bacteria go to fight off the bad bacteria. And the good bacteria is responsible for 70% of your immune system in your body. Okay, so that's why healthy fats and a sufficient amount of fiber, which is number 2, is so important. So you got to get an adequate amount of fiber, at least 50 grams of fiber. Okay, again, the only place you're going to find fiber is in plants. So you got to eat plants, and you got to eat plants that are uncooked. Your whole diet cannot be cooked. So you got to eat some salads, you got to eat some fruits, you got to eat some nuts, some seeds, some ancient greens, things of that nature. And you got to eat them in their original state or their raw state. Because once you start to cook food, you're adulterating or doubling up the fiber that's in it. Okay, so hugely important. Another thing that is very helpful to the gut is digestive rest. I talk about this in my book, Vegetation Over Medication, how important it is that we give our digestive system a rest instead of eating like a cow. A cow grazes all day, meaning like you can look on the pastures, you go see a cow eating at 6 in the morning, you'll see them eating at noon in the day and 4 at night. And I mean, if a cow is up, they're eating and they're grazing all throughout the day. We're not made to eat like that. A cow has 6 stomachs. Okay, so we're supposed to give our bodies digestive rest, and we're not supposed to actually snack between meals. We're supposed to give our bodies at least 3 to 4 hours between meals before we have a meal. So intermittent fasting is one of the ways that we can give ourselves digestive rest. And so that's one of the things that I recommend for people: intermittent fasting and not snacking. Okay. Number 4 is exercise. Exercise is so important because, again, it establishes the tone of our body. It establishes the health of our midsection. And when we don't exercise on a continuous basis, even that alone, that sedentary lifestyle, can make it difficult to have normal bowel function. Okay, so exercise, hugely important. Number 5 is hydration. Not only is fiber important to your gut health, but also hydration. Okay, a large part of a bowel movement is water. So if you're dehydrated, you're not going to be able to form a bowel movement. I know a lot of people have told me about instances where they had a bowel movement, but it was so painful because when it came out, it was so dry. and that's coming from the dehydration. Okay, so properly hydrating yourself, and then also eating an anti-inflammatory diet. Okay, an anti-inflammatory diet is high in healthy fats that contain a larger ratio of omega-3s. Okay, but it's also healthy in nutrients that you need for gut health as well too. Vitamins, minerals, trace elements, healthy amino acids, things of that nature. You need that in your diet along with the fiber. Okay, so an anti-inflammatory diet is a whole foods plant-based diet. Okay, and the last thing, number 7, is elimination of waste and toxicity. It's not just about what you can eat, it's also about what you eliminate. Okay, so a lot of people could be eating the right foods or start eating the right foods, but you got to think about the years of poor and neglectful nutritional habits. Okay, what is accumulated in the walls of the bowels, what's accumulated, in the stomach, what's accumulated in the entire body. Okay, which is causing a lot of dysfunction. Okay, so a huge part of the healing process is actually eliminating that waste that is accumulated, because as I said before, people have between 10 and 25 pounds of undigested fecal matter rotting and fermenting in their gut. And as a result, that rotting, fermenting fecal matter is also creating its own toxins. It's also ruining that lining of the colon, okay? So it's also important to do things that are gonna help you eliminate. And so as I've talked before about on previous videos, that's one of the things that the Tommy Detox in my full body detox does. It's designed to essentially eliminate a lot of that waste in the gut. Okay, so it's like a garden. If you wanted to start a garden or restart a garden that you had did before, but you neglected and all these weeds grew into it, you wouldn't restart the garden, which is what we're doing when we're trying to reactivate our gut health. You wouldn't restart the garden by just start planting good stuff. You got to get rid of the weeds first. You got to make sure the soil is healthy. Okay, so you got to clean up first, and cleaning up is my 28-day or 14-day detox. It cleans out the entire digestive system. So I hope you guys have enjoyed today's content. This was a lot, but this will be very helpful, not only for you, but for those of you who have people in your family, friends, loved ones who begin to struggle in their gut health, in their colon health, or begin to struggle with this second leading cause of actual cancer-related death, which is colon cancer. So if you enjoyed the video, please hit the comments. Let me know what you think in the comments, and make sure you subscribe if you didn't. Until the next time, peace and blessings, and Godspeed.